Welcome to the very first episode of the Strip Sports Daily Delivery Podcast. I am Michael Rand. I am excited to be here. This podcast is a long time in the making. If you are here right now, thank you for listening. You probably know what we're up to if you're already here, but let me just give you a quick rundown. 30 minutes every weekday. Should be up around 8 a.m. every day for your listening pleasure. We'll cover all sorts of sports topics in the Minnesota and national landscape. I'll do an interview every day with a Star Tribune guest, typically, but also a lot of outside guests, and we'll have a lot of fun because I've got some good segments cooked up for you as well. The first one is called "What Did I Miss?" Here we go with that right off the bat. If you did not turn on your TV after 7 o'clock or so Sunday night, you missed two pretty important wins for Minnesota teams, including, first and foremost, the Wild. They got tons of guys injured or out. Otherwise, Marcus Foligno on the COVID list, Kevin Fiala serving a suspension, Matt Dumba out, Johansson out. So many guys not playing. They'd just gotten smoked by Colorado, earlier the day before. Colorado, good team. Zach Parise just praising them up and down. Wild's down in this game, late. They rally, get the tying goal. Kaprizov gets tons of good work in the zone. Victor Rask gets paid, and then Jonas Brodin scores the game winner and swears on live TV after the game. We're not going to play that clip because we don't need to get shut down a minute into this podcast, but. Just a huge win in the context of, they're going to see Colorado 4 times in a row. They're going to see them 8 times this year. Probably the best team they're going to see in this kind of weird COVID schedule. And to at least prove they belong on the same ice, I would say was a big deal. Let's hear a little clip from Dean Evison after the game.
The players gave us great confidence, and if I exuded that, it was because of the group. I mean, they felt the confidence, and they were instilled that in us as a staff, and yeah, we were excited about tonight's game. We were excited about the challenge.
Also, Sunday night, the Timberwolves won a game, which is news this season in and of itself. But I would say the manner in which they won was even more important. Anthony Edwards, 23 points, stuffs the stat sheet with a bunch of rebounds, assists. And maybe more importantly than the outcome for him was that he looked comfortable doing it. He looked like he had a plan. He looked like he was comfortable in the offense. And again, he's a 19-year-old rookie. This is going to be a long process for him. We'll get into that more later this week. I'm going to have Chris Hine from the Star Tribune, who covers the Timberwolves, on later this week, I think on Wednesday probably. And we'll do more Wild talk tomorrow when Sarah McClellan is on. She covers the team for the Star Tribune as well. But, Anthony Edwards, it's going to be a long haul for him, and it hasn't looked really smooth early on. I like his game, but the efficiency just hasn't been there so far this season. So for him to have a game like that against Cleveland, a team that is, not a great team, but it would be a playoff team in the East. And there's another one that's my pet project. Some of my very best friends are probably laughing at me right now because I'm always getting mad that the Wolves aren't in the Eastern Conference because I think they should be over in the East and they have an easier path to the playoffs at the very least if they were over there. But it's just one of those things where Edwards, it's going to be a long haul for him, and it was good to see him have a game like that where he was able to live up to his full capabilities. So the Wolves get that win 109-104, and they will play Cleveland right away again Monday night. And I would be remiss if I did not bring up probably the biggest talker of the weekend. Matthew Stafford traded to the Rams for Jared Goff. Jared Goff going back to Detroit in that trade, along with 2 first-round picks. I still haven't fully formulated an opinion about who won this trade. I think it's complicated. Anytime you get 2 first-round picks, you got to feel pretty good about yourself. And, strangely enough, Stafford and Goff had pretty similar stats the last 4 seasons. Obviously, one of them had Sean McVay and a whole bunch of really good players around him. That would be Jared Goff. And one of them, Matthew Stafford, did not in the dysfunctional Detroit organization. But, I'm all about all-in moves, and I usually think that the team that got the best player won the trade. I don't know if Matthew Stafford is the guy you go all in for. And so we're going to find out a little bit more about that as time goes on. Is he the guy that can get the Rams to the Super Bowl, or is this, a good quarterback who they just made a massive overpay for? If I had to guess, I'm going to guess it's the latter. I still think that was probably, it's probably a move that works for both teams. It could really backfire for both teams as well.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
At the very least, the Stafford trade gives me a great, nice, natural segue into my first interview segment of the entire podcast, which I should say I am attempting the classic, under promise, over deliver here. I only hope this is maybe the third or fourth greatest podcast of all time. So that's where my that's where my goals are set right now. I don't want to promise too much as we move forward here. But it does set up nicely for the first interview segment with the Star Tribune's Mark Craig. We get to talk a whole lot about quarterbacks, about the Super Bowl, and kind of the Vikings approach as it pertains to all that.
Well, I am thrilled to be joined on this very first episode of Strip Sports Daily Delivery by Mark Craig, veteran NFL writer. He's covered a ton of Super Bowls, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune. Mark, how you doing, first off?
Doing well. You're starting at the bottom, huh? Work your way up.
Start at the top, man. It's Super Bowl week, and who knows more about the Super Bowl than you do, I think. I want to get into two subjects in particular that, aside from being relevant to an interesting Super Bowl matchup, maybe have some Vikings relevance as well. The idea on a lot of these interview segments is that we'll try to go deep on some interesting subjects, maybe throw a little bit of data at you, Mike Zimmer's favorite thing, Pro Football Focus, things like that. Let's talk about the quarterbacks in this game first. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, you couldn't really find two bigger extremes in terms of age, at least, and maybe in terms of style. What do you, let's get your thoughts on the matchup, and then I'll get into a little bit of, kind of how quarterback has evolved, and are the Vikings on the right track relative to how teams seem to be building a Super Bowl caliber team around a quarterback. So first off, your thoughts on this matchup in particular.
Oh, yeah, I love the matchup. It's old versus new. I'm doing a story on for Sunday's paper. Talked to Brad Johnson, a classic pocket passer that won a Super Bowl, hard to believe now, 18 years ago. But if you look at the 21 Super Bowls that have been played this millennium, 19 have been won by what you would call a pocket passer. And you had Russell Wilson, and then you had Mahomes last year. And now here's Mahomes going for two in a row. It's kind of, is it the last stand for the pocket passer with Brady, who's been hawking him? He's going for his 7th Super Bowl win, playing in his 10th Super Bowl. It's just incredible how he's playing. So you look at it, I love the matchup. I also like the defense matchup. If you look at how the defense played, the Bucs defense played on Sunday, if they didn't play that well, Brady's not going to the Super Bowl. So it's not just all Brady.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That I think as much as we like to pin, the Super Bowl fortunes and talk about quarterback Super Bowl record, it's even though it's the most important position on the field and maybe in all of organized team sports, it is more than that. Tom Brady throws 3 interceptions in the 3 on consecutive possessions in the NFC title game, and they still are able to make enough stops to beat the Packers and another very good quarterback in Aaron Rodgers in that game. Philosophically, you mentioned kind of pocket passers being the norm in these Super Bowl victories. One other thing that I think that has been established, in particular in the last decade, in this kind of era of ever since they instituted kind of the rookie wage scale, is a lot of teams that make the Super Bowl either have kind of an unquestioned, no doubt Hall of Fame quarterback like a Tom Brady, an Aaron Rodgers, a Drew Brees. We could list a lot of different ones. Or they have a young quarterback who maybe is good enough early on to be a starter, but who then because he's inexpensive allows you to do certain things with your salary cap that you might not otherwise be able to do. And there's been a couple other exceptions, your Eli Mannings, your other examples along the way, but mostly this is the path that has been chosen. And you see that with both these teams. Mahomes still, Kansas City still living off that rookie deal for Mahomes, and Brady being one of the greatest of all times. Do you agree with the idea that is kind of those are the two main paths to modern success, at least when it comes to how you build around a quarterback to get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, the Peyton Mannings and Tom Brady's and these guys, they cover a lot of mistakes. You can have we'll see, like with Mahomes' case, Mike Remmers will probably be playing left tackle. I mean, the quarterback has so much to do with how the protection. They can just make a lot of bad things go away. Now, Mahomes, I'm not sure where he was on his contract last year. Maybe it's a situation where he's both cases. I mean, he got paid in the offseason. He's making a ton of money. So he's young and a franchise quarterback. So he's the kind of guy that's why I like this matchup so much, is because who knows, Brady might be in 2 or 3 more of these. We don't know. It's almost like back when Tiger Woods was doing things. You can't put a ceiling on it. But Mahomes, this could be like, remember when Mahomes may go on and win 8 of these. That's why I love this matchup. But yeah, typically, if you have a great young quarterback, that's the dream, because you can stockpile, maybe win a Super Bowl, get that in your pocket, and then when it's time to pay him, you pay him, and you're playing with house money. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it, but I think you need the quarterback to also work within your system.
Now, the Vikings have tried to do that. They've drafted quarterbacks over the years with hopes that they would become that franchise quarterback, whether it's, Dante Culpepper 20 years ago, or, more recently Christian Ponder, and then Teddy Bridgewater. And, for reasons of performance and injury, those things don't necessarily always work out. In the case of the Vikings, they didn't work out. They're on now, and going to enter year 4, almost assuredly of the Kirk Cousins era. He's kind of in the middle, right? He's not that future Hall of Famer. He was, I think everybody would agree, he's an above average quarterback, but not in that kind of Aaron Rodgers first tier of quarterbacks. Are the Vikings on the right path with Kirk Cousins to realize this ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl?
That's such a hard question. With Kirk, I think he's more, and you're right, he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not a lot of those guys, but they're paying that way. I think when you look at the quarterbacks, like in this game, the biggest difference I see in Kirk's obviously more of a pocket passer, but he's a little bit athletic. But what I see is the biggest difference is that the brains of Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady move at a faster pace than how Kirk and guys that are in that second tier, third tier, whatever, process things. So these guys are processing things. If Tom Brady he starts, typically in the shotgun, he's 5 yards back. He goes to 9 yards, steps up. And when he steps up to 8 yards, it's gone. I mean, it's whether it's out, whether it's to the check down, whether it's deep, short, whatever, he makes that decision. Boom, boom, boom. Whereas a Kirk Cousins, there's a second hitch, there's a third hitch. And by the time he gets to 2.5 hitches, he's down. And a lot of times he lose the ball. So to me, he's not a guy that really moves outside the pocket. They did some of that stuff with him. There would always seem to be a free runner at him too many times. So the biggest difference between the great ones and the ones that are good and good passers are they process things so much faster. And you can help a Kirk Cousins or someone that's on that second tier to maybe process things quicker by having continuity, which the Vikings haven't had in their systems. Their play callers, I should say. So yeah, it's that's a problem whenever you're talking about a Kirk Cousins as compared to the great one.
Yeah, that's kind of the conundrum the Vikings face as they've kind of been on this on again, off again, make the playoffs. They've never been really bad in the Mike Zimmer era. They've always won at least 7 games. They've always, at least after that first year, they've been in contention to a certain degree. I think the quarterback question is a good one, and I think it'll still be, I think as you watch this Super Bowl, on Sunday, you'll see, the kind of what ifs, what if the Vikings, had a different, approach or could, hit that home run with the Patrick Mahomes, but that's easier said than done. No doubt about it.
I think that they can win with a Kirk Cousins. They just need the margin for error is so much smaller when you don't have the Patrick Mahomes, the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's. But even those guys need, they need for their entire defense not to get injured. They need the ability to run the ball. They don't necessarily need to lead the league in rushing. But if you look at the Chiefs, they went out. Their first round draft pick was a running back. They have the ability to run the ball. That regular season game against the Bills, 245 yards when everybody was expecting a shootout, they ran on the Bills. Mahomes himself is the threat of Mahomes running is kind of a running game that people have to be aware of.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought up the running game because that transitions into the second subject I want to really hit on in our time here. The Vikings in the running game and, their commitment to it has almost become a Twitter meme, establish the run. I think if there's a criticism of this offense, which was a really good offense in 2020, it was a top 10 offense in a lot of different ways, whether it's an analytic based measure or more of a raw yardage or point scored measure. But these two Super Bowl teams don't run all that much. I think they ranked like 23rd and 29th in total carries this year. And one stat I want to put on you is this one. I think if there's maybe a more fair or nuanced criticism of how the Vikings operate, it's 2nd and 10 this year. The Vikings ran the ball 44% of the time, which is the second most in the NFL. Tampa Bay and Kansas City ran it basically half that time, 24%, 23%, among the top 3 fewest in football. Those are from Sharp Football. What do you make of the kind of running game, chatter in general and how the Vikings approach trying to win games offensively?
Part of them throwing the ball probably or running the ball at 44% there is, they're looking to get a first down in 2 plays as opposed to a Mahomes or, they're going to make magic and get 27 yards down the field on second down. Kirk Cousins in 3rd and long is a bad situation. And I think with their running game, you can argue about the style all you want, but with Dalvin Cook, 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 5, they're okay with that. Whereas opposed to 3rd and 10, and then it's basically a punt a lot of times with the way Kirk plays. But yeah, there's just so much. You look at a team, it's the team sport. It's not just you got to take into what your quarterback's like, what your defense is like. The Vikings this year, that defense was destroyed by injury and defections. Basically, their window to win it all was last year, and they couldn't do it. And once that happened, we, for whatever reason, I think I picked them 9-7. A lot of people picked them 9-7 to make the playoffs. We just thought that, they would find a way. But with the not having off season, we should have seen that this was just going to be a rebuild. And then when the injuries hit, it was over.
Offensively, do you think their philosophy or their kind of the limitation, what you described, because I think that was a good point. You're only a lot of what you do is dictated by your personnel. Is that more of a Cousins thing or an offensive line thing or a combination thereof where they trust certain things more than other things in terms of how they would call plays and set things up?
Yeah, they were such an unusual team offensively. They just had long stretches where, and a lot of this I would put on Cousins at the end of games. Maybe the Tennessee game, Dallas. There were some games where at the end, they
Chicago
got
too. Yeah.
with a beat up defense, with a limited, maybe a limited offense. They got to the end of games where it just cried out for the quarterback to be a quick decision maker, make plays. And there were some endings where we all kind of sat around and looked at each other and said, that's it. It's like now it's like, it's just not what we're used to seeing in the NFL, especially when they had the abilities offensively to play. You'd see them do things, play action, where they were such a good rhythm, and then it would just disappear. And I can't help but sometimes put that on the quarterback because he's the leader of what they have. And there were just stretches where the offense would disappear, and it just begged to like, hey, you have to carry this team, and it just would go away. But yet they were statistically, and there were stretches where, they were fantastic between what they could do with Dalvin and in the play action, and with Jefferson stepping up as a great player. It's there, but they're going to need a full team. They cannot be carried by the quarterback at this point.
Awesome. Mark Craig, thank you so much for joining the program today, and we will be in touch down the road, okay?
Great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Good stuff from Mark as usual, and just a really thoughtful discussion about quarterbacks and where everything is headed with the Vikings, and presumably, with Kirk Cousins over the next, several years. Wait, what's this? What am I hearing right now? When you hear that sound on this podcast, it is because I feel like a trade machine. Now, the sound you heard, it was a beautiful little piano ditty from local musician Trevor Wogan. He made me a note-for-note copy, first off, from a segment from a James Brown song, Get Up, Feel Like a Sex Machine, that became a little concerned that could run into some legal issues. So I told him, hey, sorry, you did a great job. That's not going to work. He made me that in like 5 minutes. He was like, hey, try this. And I was like, this is awesome. So for all of your piano and guitar needs, Trevor Wogan. Awesome job by him to do that. You'll hear that periodically. I don't feel like a trade machine a lot, and I didn't want to get sucked into this one. I feel like I got sucked into this whole Deshaun Watson story 3 different ways in the last week. I was trying to avoid it. I was trying to be like, no, this doesn't pertain to the Vikings. There's no way they're going to trade Kirk Cousins. But 3 things got me back in. First, Deshaun Watson last week saying he wants to trade. Okay, so you go from this is a possibility, this is a guy that's unhappy, to all of a sudden here's a guy who wants a trade. Number 2, Bill Barnwell at ESPN puts out a list about Deshaun Watson, teams he could be traded to. And one of them, in the 17 possibilities, he lists the Vikings at number 10. They got to give up 3 first-round picks for him, so that's the trade. Essentially, 3-team trade. I think you got the Patriots in the mix too, so we'll see about that. Then the Stafford trade happened. That was the third thing that kind of pushed me over the edge and made me think, okay, this has to be a segment on Monday. If Matthew Stafford can get traded, I know he wanted to get traded, but if there can be a blockbuster of that sort, and Kirk Cousins is a very similar quarterback to Matthew Stafford, I don't care if you disagree. It's true. They're kind of the same guy statistically. Neither one of them has won at a big level, but teams probably think surround him with the right people, good things can happen. So I didn't want to go there, but here we are. And, I want to get into the Barnwell thing a little bit, because usually in the trade machine, when I do this segment with various teams, I'll be coming up with my own trade. But Barnwell did this all on his own. So, this is what he thinks basically the price would be if the Vikings were going to go after Deshaun Watson, like a reasonable price. He's saying the 14th and 90th overall picks this year, so that's a first and a third, plus a first-rounder in 2022, a first-rounder in 2023, and Kirk Cousins gets traded to the Patriots. The Texans get Deshaun Watson and a 4th-round pick. Texans give Deshaun Watson and a 4th-round pick to the Vikings. Patriots give up a 5th-round pick, a couple 5th-round picks, and then Jarrett Stedman to the Texans. So, basically, I don't know. I like, this is kind of the same a little bit of a similar question I had to the Matthew Stafford trade, in that, is Deshaun Watson the guy? And plenty of people think he is the guy, so I'm not saying he's not the guy. But I you look at it, he's going to get expensive soon. We talked about with Mark Craig, we talked about value with the quarterback being such a big deal, about the rookie contracts being such a big deal. I do worry that that he would, for as good as he is, he's not a Patrick Mahomes. If you are adding him into this mix, are you just recreating the same problem you have right now with Kirk Cousins, which is that you're going to be paying him a lot of money soon, and you're not going to have the assets to build around him because you're giving up a whole bunch of first-round picks, and your offensive line is already still a mess. So if I was going to make a trade of this type, I think I would almost rather, if you were able to trade Kirk Cousins and get some kind of major value for him, like a Matthew Stafford fetch, if you were able to just get a first-round pick for Kirk Cousins, which I don't think is outrageous, right? I don't think that's outrageous at all, because Sam Bradford, the Vikings, Vikings were desperate, but the Vikings traded a first-round pick for Sam Bradford. Like, these things happen. Like, teams want a quarterback, they value somebody, and Kirk Cousins has had good seasons. This isn't a guy you're just trying to unload, or a guy that's old. So if they did that, I would rather see them try to draft a quarterback this year, move up as high as you can to get one of those top quarterbacks in the draft, because that is where the franchise value is. It's a young quarterback who you think can be good right away and is not making a whole lot of money, because then you're not paying him big bucks. You can then afford to build around him with the salary cap. So the Deshaun Watson trade, maybe it's plausible. I don't know if that's their best idea in the big picture. But you know what? I wrote about this last week, and I got a few emails from fans, and one of them was good. It's just like, why are you writing about this? This would be cool. This would be fun. And I'm like, you're right. It would be cool. It would be fun. Like, people who watch these games, people who are fans and just watch these games, that I tend to forget sometimes that the entertainment value and just the fact that something new is exciting, I tend to forget about that. So if it's a 50-50 ball and you can go one way or the other, maybe that is the way to go. Just do it and see what happens. So I don't know. I don't think anything's going to happen anyway. I think it's a lot of late January, early February chatter for nothing, filling the void before the Super Bowl. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going anywhere, but I am more curious about this than I was a week ago. Now, one of the fun things about this podcast is I'm going to do a segment pretty much every day, different segments, but different ways of getting feedback from you, the listener. And today's way I'm going to do that is a little segment I call Infrequently Asked Questions. So that's kind of what it sounds like, right? It's what, do you have something kind of weird on your mind? Because I got a lot of things that are weird on my mind a lot of times. Ask me that question. Ask me that sports question, and I will try to answer it. The first one today comes from my friend Dana Wessel. He hit me up on Twitter when I asked for these questions. Everybody had the same opportunity. I'm not playing favorites, but I liked his question, and he was kind enough to actually send it in via audio. So here's that question.
Hello there. Long-time reader, first-time podcast question asker guy. I was wondering, with all the issues that U.S. Bank Stadium has of falling apart and the siding doesn't stay up, do you ever just miss the Metrodome, even more specifically just that musty, stale beer and urine smell of the Metrodome? Thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, so 3 things about that. 1, yes, I do miss it in a way. I think it's a weird thing to say because Target Field is such a nicer ballpark to watch the Twins. It was absolutely soul-crushing to go into the Metrodome on a beautiful summer night and spend 3 to 4 hours in this kind of cave. It's almost like, going to your basement instead of spending time outside. We wait all this time for summer, and then you go inside to the Metrodome. But a place is more than just, the environment. It's the memories, right? So you have a lot of good memories from the Metrodome, so obviously you're going to miss it in a certain way. I don't know if the smell that he references is the thing that I specifically miss, but maybe that's kind of part of what you remember about the Metrodome. It's an overall experience. I'll always remember, getting $99 Viking season tickets with my friend Rocket, back in the 90s when it was obstructed view and we were like dodging the beams up in the upper deck. Like those those are memories. Like, watching the last place Twins team, 6,000 fans were there. But it's, it's kind of fun when you're the only one there. So yes, Dana, in a way, I do miss the Metrodome, and maybe, just maybe, the smell is a tiny piece of it. All right, let's end with a little segment I like to call the Cooler, something to hopefully make you feel smarter. It's kind of geared around the water cooler at work. Maybe many of you aren't around a water cooler at work right now because a lot of us are working from home, myself included. But, something hopefully to give you something to think about, spin it forward a little bit. So I want to talk for just briefly about the Minnesota Lynx. Today is the day that free agents can officially start signing. Looks like 3 pretty good ones are going to sign with the Lynx, as we learned last week, including all-star guard Kayla McBride. I just want to, this is a team that lost a lot of its championship core, right? Maya Moore, leaves the game to pursue much loftier goals. Lindsay Whalen retires. Simone Augustus no longer with the team. Like the big pieces from a lot of those 4 championship teams leave. How do you reload when you've been really good? Well, you become a model organization that players want to sign with in the offseason, and you draft the back-to-back rookies of the year with the number 6 and the number 16 picks, which never happens in the WNBA. Nafisa Collier and Crystal Dangerfield the last 2 seasons. So just in praise of this organization and what it's been able to do, watch for those signings today, and watch out for the Lynx, because they are, they were a team that made the league semifinals already last season. They're only getting better right now, and I feel like they're kind of loaded up again for what could be a championship team. Thank you so much for joining me here today on the very first episode of Strip Sports Daily Delivery. We'll be back at it tomorrow, like I said, with Sarah McClellan, who covers the Wild and a ton of other fun stuff. Who knows what is yet to unfold in the next 24 hours.